Guys that sleep with other guys' girlfriends, do you feel bad afterwards? Why or why not? Story 1. I had a brief friends with benefits arrangement with a girl who had a boyfriend. I didn't know the guy, and I was young and impetuous at the time. After time went on, I started to feel bad about it. It all came to a head when she told me she wanted to leave him to be with me, and I said no. She asked why not. I said I couldn't trust her as a girlfriend. She asked why. I said, you've literally spent the last 2 months cheating on your boyfriend with me. Why else do you think? Story 2. I lost a mate this way. We were really close friends, and he was going through a rough time with his then girlfriend. She decided to get back at him by writing some bullshit in her journal about her and I hooking up, and then conveniently left it out so that he would see it. It was 100% untrue. Friend confronted me on it, and I told him it was untrue, but he didn't believe me. We stopped talking after that. He eventually reached out to me about 6 months later after she admitted to him that she had made it all up. The damage was done, and we never were the same again. Story 3. My first girlfriend of almost 3 years put her word against my best friend regarding things that happened between them. Not sleeping together though. The details are complicated, so don't worry about it. In the end, after a few months of back and forth, slow burn fighting, my decision was to just not pick a side. I would keep dating her and keep having him as a friend. They just didn't have to interact at all. My best friend said he understood the difficulty of my situation being put in the middle, trying to understand what happened while I wasn't there from two conflicting stories, both sides of which had holes and inconsistencies with the events I had personally witnessed at the time the events in question occurred. Despite his opinions on her, he respected my decision to keep dating her. My girlfriend wouldn't let it go and effectively gave me an ultimatum that it was her or him. This past weekend, my best bud and I played video games together and I had a blast. Story 4. I did it twice not knowing they had BFs. Yes, I felt bad afterwards, and I totally cut contact when I found out. Story 5. Same here. Found out one of them was married and tried to track down her husband and inform him, but wasn't able to as this was a hookup, and I could not find her name anywhere. I'm pretty sure she used a fake last name. Her first name was so common, a fake wouldn't even be needed, but I wouldn't be surprised if that too was fake. The other turned out to be an open relationship. When I spoke to her boyfriend, he knew all about it and asked me straight up, how was it? She's good, isn't she? I still would have liked to know that fact beforehand, but that wasn't nearly as bad. Story 6. In my case, I did know she had a boyfriend, however, it was consensual. She approached me and told me she wanted to me. They had an arrangement and I did sleep with the girl while her boyfriend was watching, so I don't feel bad because I did something to fulfill that couple's fetishes. 3 out of 10, I didn't like it, it's just not my thing, would not recommend. Story 7. When I was in college, a married woman tried to hide her marriage to a deployed Marine. As soon as I found out, I bounced. I never condoned cheating. Story 8. A married coworker tried it with me. I'm like, that's how dudes get shot, no thank you. Story 9. A buddy's wife tried to get with me once. I told her she had 90 seconds to call her husband, my best friend from high school, put the call on speaker, and explain to the two of us why she was a complete piece of shit, or I'd call him myself. They divorced the next month. Story 10. Reconnected with a girl from high school after she posted about seeing a band I like. We were just messaging each other about music and stuff. Out of nowhere, the conversation started getting sexual. I knew she had a boyfriend, and I was friends with him from high school. I was just giving cold responses to those messages, things like a standard LOL or ... and tried to steer the conversation in a different direction. When they didn't stop, I told her I was married and not appropriate for me to talk to another woman like that. She continued, so I took screenshots of her conversation and messaged her boyfriend. He thanked me for the info, and 2 days later her Facebook status changed to single. Story 11. Didn't know at the time, he walked in on us, we dumped her and went to the bar. Story 12. That happened to me but in reverse. Caught them, then invited him out for a beer. He was lied to as well and looked like he could use a friend in the moment. We actually had a lot in common and became pretty close friends. My friendship to him lasted longer than the relationship. Story 13. I hooked up with a lady at my gym. She didn't say about being married. She came to my place the 2 times we hooked up. I saw her again at the gym with a dude. When he went off to go do something, I went over and said hi. She said don't talk to me here with her husband around, she'll call me later. She called me later and told me her husband worked out of town a ton. When in town she was with him. When he's out she's free to do as she pleases. We did not meet up again. Story 14. My friend came home to visit from living abroad for 15 years. His wife was pregnant with his first child. He was hitting on every woman he came in contact with. We had 2 conversations about it, each time he'd justify it one way or another. I'm doing those women a favor. Life is short. It's mutual. It's a natural desire. People do it sometimes. She won't know anyway. It's my last chance. I finally had to sit him down and tell him, if you're messing around on your wife, I don't want to know you anymore. Lose my number. Story 15. I have done this, but I did not know at the time that she had a boyfriend. Yeah, I felt kind of bad, but I didn't know. If a guy knowingly sleeps with a girl that has a boyfriend, he's a dirtbag. Same for the girls. Story 16. Yeah, I did it one time. Sadly, I knew she was in a relationship. I had just gotten out of a long relationship that ended because my SO cheated, so some part of me feels like it was some sort of mental revenge. Kind of a I've been wronged, so I don't care if I wrong someone else sort of thing. Next morning, I felt like complete shit and still feel awful about it. Never again. Story 17. Recovering fuckboy here. No, I did not feel bad afterwards because I hated myself and I wanted to prove I was lovable. So if I could get attention through the barrier of her being in a relationship, then it was just extra proof I had value. Plus, I could prove to myself that relationships weren't real. It wasn't me that couldn't be valued by someone else. Everyone was just lying about being happy. There were definitely other circumstances, but it was always pretty much boiled down to me equating my value as a person with who I could have sex with. I went to therapy and have been happily married for 12 years. Recommend it. Story 18. It happened twice. First time, I didn't recognize her as I met her at a house party. We kind of hit it off and went back to her place. Finding out afterwards, yeah, it made me feel terrible. Second time, met someone at a party I went to with a friend. They kind of seemed to hit it off more than I did. We get invited back to her place as we leave, and on our way there, she mentions that she's married. Her husband travels a lot for work, and she claims that their marriage is an open situation. Well, we started, but about 5 minutes in, I just felt too damn uncomfortable about the whole situation, and I stopped. Did not feel good at all. And the morning after, I hurried out of there. So no thanks, not again. The whole thing about it makes me feel bad. Story 19. This is how I lost my dad. After my parents got divorced, my dad started dating this other chick. Lady neglected to tell my dad she had a husband in prison. 1 year passes and the guy gets out of prison, tracks down my dad in his apartment and offs him. I was 8, and with the divorce came split custody for my brother and I. I will never forget that on the weekend my father was supposed to take my brother and I for his time, but my mom kept us both with her because we had a cold. So if my mom never kept us home that day, we would have been a witness to his passing. Crazy how the world works. Story 20. Same thing happened to my cousin Tim. Dude was just the kindest soul. I really looked up to him when I was younger. He taught me to play pool and how to talk to girls. Well, one day he just ups and moves to Salt Lake City, met this woman online and decided to make an adventure of it. Well, evidently this woman failed to mention that she was recently separated and that her would-be ex-husband had a history of violence and a restraining order out against him. So they go to dinner one night at a nearby roadside diner, and unbeknownst to Tim, the husband had followed her there. This man casually walks into the diner, stops at the table, raised his gun, and then executed my cousin. Then he put the gun down and waited for the cops to show up. He didn't physically harm his wife. Now, I'm not saying she got away unscathed. Witnessing something like that is going to f you up for sure, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't blame her. I did, and I still kind of do. Story 21. Hooked up with a girl at a party once. We hit it off and arranged to go on an actual date the next week. About an hour later, someone told me her boyfriend had just showed up. I gave the dude a beer, explained that I had no idea she wasn't single, and that I'm sorry. He gave me a massive hug and thanked me for being upfront. We both told her to f off and spend the rest of the night drinking and singing karaoke together. I didn't feel bad. I was lied to, he was betrayed, she was nothing more to it really. Story 22. I hooked up with a girl who had a long-term boyfriend at the time. I didn't know, and we had a few encounters over a 2-month period. One day I was curious and decided to look at her socials, and that's when I found out about him. I never bothered to look because I was being ignorant, and it was my first time being in a friends with benefits situation, so I was excited and wanted to keep it secret. As I scrolled down her socials, all I saw were pics of them on expensive dates and trips, and I just felt so bad for the guy. I felt like I had become the thing I hated the most. So that same night I decided to DM him about the situation and send him the text between me and her to show him proof. He then called me and sounded really hurt, holding back tears and all I could do was just say sorry over and over. But he thanked me and told me he would be leaving her. I then blocked her number and thought it was over with, but later on that week the girl showed up at my place of work and damaged my car. Although I was angry at the moment, I chose not to press charges as advised by the police because the damage was minimal. On a positive note, he found a new girl who looks way better and they equally appreciate each other outwardly on their socials, so yeah, it was a happy ending. Story 23. I did it knowingly during high school. I was dating and she was too, but we both had issues in our relationships and we didn't know how to figure them out. Clinging to our toxic relationships, we found solace in each other and enjoyed spending time together. We ended up fooling around and after we had sex, we both stopped. We stayed friends for a while and both continued dating, but eventually both of us were single. though. I regret it. He doesn't know about it. I told my girlfriend and she accepted my apology, even though we did break up about a year later. I'm not proud of myself and I still hate myself for it. Story 24. I ran into an old girlfriend in a college bar. Things went as things do sometimes, and she stayed the weekend at my place and had some marathon sessions. I was cold ghosted after that and found out she was engaged and her wedding was the next weekend. I honestly vomited and tracked down the groom's parents, as I could not track down the groom. His father was angry but appreciative of my honesty. The groom eventually called me and no wedding took place.